All right. So today, what we are going to study about is what is called as a table space management. So far, we saw how do we manage control file, how do we manage redo log files, which are important part of the database. Control file basically has all the important information of the database. Redo log files basically have all the changes which are being done on the database, all those are recorded into the online redo log files. And we also saw what is the archive log file. Archive log file is basically a copy of the online redo log files which will be used for recovery purposes. What is recovery? We'll see that when we get to the rman part of a database, right? So today we'll be seeing table space management. So what is a table space? A table space is a logical structure which basically has all the data saved in it. So if you remember this during the initial days of the class, we had seen the different structures of the database. One is logical, other is physical. In physical structures, we have data file and OS blocks. So if you remember that Excel sheet which we saw, where we created some OS blocks and then we joined them. All right. So like we had OS block of 2 kilobyte, we had considered each OS block to be of 2 kilobytes. And with DB block size of say 8 KB, what it used to do is it is to select these 4 blocks and mark that one as one block for the database. So that would be the 8 kilo block for the database. So these blocks which we see, those are the physical files. Okay, you can see that on the server level, but again, DB is it's not DB's headache to determine the blocks and everything. It is the headache of the Linux admin. Now these OS blocks are grouped into, and they are part of the Oracle data block. And these OS blocks are grouped into, and they become a data file. So data file is the place where all the objects which are there for your database, those exist. Now, when I say objects, few of the most important types of objects are like table, indexes, then we have views, materialized views, etc. We had seen that in previous classes, what exactly those objects are. So a table might be just an Excel sheet like this, which has a number of rows and columns in which all the data can exist. So this might be your table, as simple as that, right? And indexes, views, and everything we had seen earlier. So what happens in a table space is, so these OS blocks are grouped into data files, and the group of data files are nothing but a table space. So table space is a logical structure. So that is why I put this in the dotted lines. It's a logical, it's not physical. You cannot see the table space on your database, but you can see the data files. I'll show you where exactly the data files are. So table space is a logical structure which has data files in it. So here the cylinders shown here are the data files. So this table space has 2 data files, and these 2 data files have tables and indexes. The small rectangles inside are the shown as the objects inside the data files. Now the objects can either exist in one data file, or they can coexist in multiple data files. That's possible. Everything is kind of logically grouped together in a table space, right? So the objects can coexist in multiple data files. That is fine. That is all database headache to find out where exactly the table exists, index exists, and everything. So while creating, you just say create a table, and it will go and create in this table space. Okay. So this is table space. So when I say physically existing data files, where exactly are these data files existing? Let me start up the database. We create a duplicate session. until the time the database starts. I don't know why the system is so slow today. Okay, so I'll show you where exactly the data files exist. Until then, let's continue here. So managing data files are physical files. We'll see that. Now, how do you know like how many data files can be created on a database? So that limit is set by a parameter which is called as db underscore files, which will basically exist in our parameter file. So parameter file, what is a parameter file? A parameter file is a file which has all the limits set up for the database. So we have memory limit setup, we have data file limit setup, and many other values in there basically. Okay, now I don't know where exactly my data files exist. I'm just going hunting uh, because I kind of know where that might exist. But if you go on a new environment and you try to hunt it, then it would be difficult for you. cd slash opt, I guess. cd home oracle cd orcl cd app. So these are my multiplex redo logs, log 001 and 002, which we saw in the last class, and Aura data would be my data files. Yeah. So these files, if you see, these are nothing but my data files. .dbf is the format which is used for data files in a generic terms. Right. Most of the companies do use this one, but uh, don't think so you have an option to put something else, so always that would be .dbf itself. Okay, so these are my data files for the database. Okay, so and let's see what is the parameter for db files for my system. Still it's starting. We'll come to the db underscore files. Okay, how do we create a table space? So now when you install a database, by default 5 tablespaces will be created. One is system, sysocs, users, undo, and temporary tablespace. So these 5 tablespace will come by default, which is, why does it create by default? Because all those are required for database to run. All these table spaces have some important information of database in those logical structures which is required for database to run as it is running, right? So those table space are created by default. Okay, database is open. First let's see the uh, parameter db underscore files. Let's see what is my limit. So by default this value is 200. Okay, so I can create up to 200 data files on this database. But if there is a necessity to increase create more data files, because my database is growing, my company is growing, the amount of data which is stored in the database is growing, you can increase this number. But all you have to do is you have to change this parameter value. When you're changing this parameter value, you have to stop the database and start the database, because this value is registered in the control file, and it is being read by the database when the database starts. If you don't restart the database will not know the new value. So those kind of parameters are called as static parameters. They are not dynamic. Dynamic in the sense you change now and immediately it takes into effect. They are not dynamic, they are static. So you change it, you have to restart the database. So this is a static parameter. Okay, so 200 is my current value. So most of the database 200 data files, it goes off for 5 6 years. But again, depending on how fast your company is growing, how much data you're dumping in the database, that statistics might change. Okay, how do we create a table space? This is the syntax for creating a table space. Sorry, create table space. Table space name, you can give any name for this table space. And data file, location of the data file, where exactly you want to create the data file, and the size of the data file. So when you are technically creating a table space, that means you already have a requirement from the application team that my application will need a table space with the name xyz, and the size of the data table space must be like 1 GB, 2 GB, 10 GB, 100 GB, anything. So all that information will come from the application document, which is created by the application, the company which has provided that application to your company. Or if your company has developed that application, then you will have to help them with setting, creating a table space, discuss with them, come up with a name for the table space which would kind of relate to the application, so that once you know the name of the table space, you know what exactly, what data is stored in that table space. So table space name, 80 90% of the times you already have it, 10% of the time you have to come up with that one by discussing with the application team. Size, you can come up with a size just to start with 32 GB, a standard size. So with 32 GB you create a table space, see how it's growing, monitor if it's a new application, monitor it for 1 week and see how the table space is growing. You can monitor the size of the table space. You'll find many queries online to get the size of the table space. Size of table space in Oracle. So this is how we create the table space. I'll show you how to check the size. Now, if you want to say you created a table space with some name XYZ, but then again the application team comes up after discussing with their higher management and they said that, okay, our table space should not be XYZ, we want to name it ABC. So in that case, can you rename the table space? Yes. What is the procedure used for renaming the table space? This is the uh, no, this is renaming of data files. So there is a procedure for renaming of table space also. Probably I will have this somewhere in the PPT, but this is for renaming the data files. So basically, when I say renaming of data files, it's basically if you want to move data files from one location to another. Say, for example, you gave a location of some location, you are not sure about the location, and you give some location with the size, and later on you figure out that that location has only less space, and the table space would need more space than that one. In that case, if you already have some data in the data files, you cannot drop and recreate because you will be losing the data. So in that case, you will have to move the data files to a new location. That is nothing but a renaming of data files. So how do you rename the data files? Basically, alter table space. This is my table space name, rename data file. This is the current location of my data file, and this is the future location of my data files. Sorry, these two are the current location of my data files, two data files, and two where I want to move it to the new location, either new location, or you can even rename the data file. Okay, same procedure. So relocating data files, renaming data files, same procedure. Okay, there might be a necessity of probably something changed. Um, the application install failed, and there is some junk data in the data files which has to be cleaned up. Then you might have to want to drop the data file, or application team came up stating that we got the wrong data, we had to get another data, so can you clean up that database for us? So when application team says like clean up database, they don't really mean clean up the whole database, they mean that clean up our data. So you need to understand, when they say database, they are trying to say that their table space or those tables in which the data exists. Right, for them it's just a black box. Database is just a black box, so they will say database. So don't take direct orders from application team. You need to use a mind when some activity has to be done on the database level. Okay, so how do we drop a data file? Alter table space user users this is a table space name over here. Drop data file and give the data file name. Okay, let me see if my database is connected. What? Okay. How to check the size of the table space? So this is the view which will be using db underscore data underscore files. This will basically, this query is basically give me the size of the table spaces in my database. Like I told you, by default 5 table spaces will be already created here. 4 are showing up. The fifth one is a temporary table space that will be in a different view, which will be db underscore temp underscore files. So data files, 4 table spaces, undo table space, sysocs table space, users table space, system table space. So these 4 table space minimum are required for the database to run. The fifth table space, temporary table space, it is uh, required, but database can run without that one also. But there is a bad side of it also, which we will see later on. Okay, so these 4 table space by default they are created. These are some default sizes it took: 65 MB, 830 MB, 5 MB, and this 820 MB. Let's see what other query we have. So this will give us both. I told you dba underscore temp underscore files, right? So this will give us probably this is temporary table space. Probably I created another temporary table space called temporary. So generally your temporary table space will be with temp name. Okay. There are queries also which shows you how much size is being used in the table space. Let me see if I can find out usage. When you are at work, don't think what will others think if I am looking for queries on Google. Everybody does that. We are not magicians to, or we are not so scholar people that we remember each and every query. So it's okay to find it from online. So like I told you, 5 table spaces, right? So this basically it's a big query. Again, you don't need to remember this query. You find this query, you go to OneNote, keep it with you. Next time when you have to determine the size of the table space, you just go to OneNote, copy paste it over here. So that is the use of OneNote. So here maximum size is 32,767. This is an MB. Basically, it's 32 GB. I told you you can create with 32 GB and proceed further, right? So in 32 GB, here used table space size. This is the column name. Used table space size is 815 MB, and table space currently used. So here he's giving multiple information, right? So it kind of confusing us. So maximum table space size, so this is 32 GB, how much it can grow maximum, right? But currently we have assigned that with only 820 MB. From 820 MB you can increase it up to 32 GB. Okay, and in out of 820 MB you have used 815 MB, which is like 99% of the table space is used, and free is like 4.5%. So you can keep this query and probably schedule something called as a job, which will run this query every day morning and send an email to your email address. Okay, so every day morning when you log in, you have a nice email, and you can check this one to see uh, if any table space is hitting close to 80 or 85%. So 85%, it's kind of a warning level for you. You have to add some extra space. Now my use is 99%, so we will try to increase the space of this system table space, okay, when we get to the actual point. So there is a way of making data files offline and online. We will see that later on. Let park this for some time. Okay. So there are different types of table spaces which you can create. Like we saw, it created 5 tablespaces by default, which is a system, sysocs, undo, temporary, and there is one more called as a users table space. So these are the high level types of table space which can be created in a database. First one is called as a big file table space. Now, like the name itself says, big files means big means something large. All right. So big file table space comes into picture when um, you are creating a table space which has to store huge amount of data. How huge? If a big file table space is created and your database block size is 8 kilobytes, then you can, that table, the table space can go up to 32 terabytes, right? This is not GB, this is after GB comes TB. So 32 terabytes. Now if your database block size is 32 kilobytes, then the big file table space size can go out till 128 terabytes, right? So if you know in advance that uh, one particular table space will hold a huge amount of data, application team said like we are coming, there's this application which will be dumping a lot of data in it. We need a table space which can hold so much of data. Then you know you have to create a table space which is a big file table space, right? So you can ask the application team, how much data do you think you are going to get into this table space on a daily basis, or are you going to get the data monthly basis, weekly basis, and get some idea from them. The more questions you ask, the more idea you get, and you can come to a conclusion like what exactly to which table space exactly to create. Right. So that is the big file table space. So either you create a big file table space or a small file table space. Big file table space specifically you say create a big file table space, or else how do we create a big file table space? You say create big file table space, and this is a table space name. How do you create a normal table space? Create tablespace name. So between create and tablespace, there is, we are putting a uh, new keyword which is called as a big file tablespace. Create big file tablespace name, data file, location of data file, and the size, right? So that is how we create a big file tablespace. So next comes a system tablespace. So what is a system tablespace and why does this get created when we are installing the database? So system tablespace is a tablespace which has data files in it to store information about the database. Now you are trying to query this information, right, about how much table space is used and everything. Where is this information stored? Somewhere in the system table space. This is all about the database, right? We are trying to query something from $log, which gives us the redo log information. Where is this stored? In the system table space. Along with this, there are other informations also which is stored in the system table space, which is required for database to do its own calculations internally for this to keep running. So all this information is dumped in that system table space. That is why it gets created when you are creating the database, because it has to store all that information somewhere, right, when it is creating. So first thing it does is creates a system table space for you, so that all the information goes and sits into the system table space. Now where is this information going and sitting in what tables? There are many tables which gets created. These tables which exist in the system table space are called as a data dictionary tables. So it's a dictionary for the Database. Basically it has all that, it's like an index for you, right? So which one, uh, if you want some information about redo logs, there is a table. If you want information about archive logs, there is a table in system tablespace. So all that information is there in the system tablespace. Now, Oracle came up with this type of concept in release 9.9. So they were happy. Oh, this is wonderfully working. Now they started dumping all that information which is required for database creation in this system tablespace. Happy, everybody's happy. Now, with so much of information dumped in the system tablespace, what started to happen? The database started becoming slow because there's so much of information in that one tablespace in those data files. Database is taking more time to read through these tables, get that information. So Oracle found out that that is the cause which is causing this to slow down. So what Oracle did was, Oracle said, okay, we will keep system tablespace for only important things, and things which are not important like historic information of the database, all that we will dump in another table space, which they called it as a sysox table space. Sysox means auxiliary table space for the system table space. System auxiliary table space. So that is how the sysox table space came into picture, right? So now Oracle found out, okay, system table space, important things. Sysox table space, it's auxiliary. So all the historic information of the database, when was the database started, when were the redo logs created, when was the data file created, all that information dumps into the sysox table space. And your system table space is for all for the current information. So those are the two important table spaces. This might be an interview question. What are the two important table spaces? System, sysox. What are the table spaces created when your database is created? System, sysox, users, undo. Two s's, two u's, and a t. System sysox, users, undo, temporary table space. Can a database run without a temporary table space? Yes. But why do we, if the database can run with a temporary table space, then why do we need a temporary table space? We'll see that when we go to the temporary table space chapter. Okay. Third one is the undo table space. Now, what is undo basically? Say you have a, for example, if this is my table, right? I put some information here. Say I put something called as 800, and this is 990. Okay. Now I changed 90 to 999 for some reason, and I want to undo it. So here I have an option to undo. Easy, right? Undo, redo. So but at the database level, where will I keep this previous information? If I'm changing this one, how can I go back, right? So the previous image of this block, in this block I have saved a number called as 90. Now I'm changing that to 999. So while I'm changing that to 999, the previous information is stored somewhere in the excel memory, cache memory. So if I put undo, it gets that information from cache memory and populates here. But on database, where does it store? It stores into a table space called as a undo table space. So again, undo table space have a data files which are called as a undo data file. You can have undo table space has a big file also. Undo table space um, uh, will be accumulating too much of information, and again there's a limit how much it can accumulate. Like we have a parameter which is called as undo retention. This one. So this is in minutes, so it can retain up to 900 minutes of information. So if you changed some information now at 9 o'clock, and you try to come back after 1,000 minutes from now, then you will not have that information. What was the information before the data change happened, right? So that is what it can maintain, up to 900 minutes of information in that particular table space. If you want to increase this one, you can increase it. Just you have to make sure that your undo table space size is more. Here our undo table space size is just 40 MB. So if you want to change this to 200 MB, yes, you can change it. No worries, just that you have to make sure you have enough storage space available. So that is the undo tablespace. How do we create undo tablespace? Create undo tablespace. This is again the name of the undo tablespace. I'll just hold it. Data file. What is the data file name and the size? Okay. So now comes temporary tablespace. So we'll pause here and we'll rejoin the session. Okay.